Hello, invisible friend. April here, and the date today is March 9th, 2026. Welcome to episode 335 of the Big Sky Astrology Podcast. This week, as eclipse season comes to an end, relationships and financial matters rise from the ashes like a phoenix as Venus and Pluto meet in a sextile. Jupiter stations direct and sprinkles a hopeful vibe on the Sagittarius Last Quarter Moon. Reach for the seemingly impossible as Mars and the North Node focus on the next steps to take. The tea kettle gets boiling hot when Mercury and Mars combine forces. And I answer a listener question about Venus. Does it have a negative side? Venus sextiles Pluto on Monday, March 9th at 11:52 p.m. Pacific Time at 4 degrees 46 minutes Aries and Aquarius. When Venus joins up with Pluto in any kind of aspect, it accentuates the passionate side of Venus. It describes the things that we deeply value and love. Venus is in Aries, where it's technically in the sign of its detriment, meaning it doesn't always behave exactly like itself. Venus in Aries can act very impulsively. It likes the chase. It knows exactly what it likes and what it doesn't like. When it comes together with Pluto, its qualities are intensified. What it likes, it really, really likes. What it wants, nothing will keep us from going after. Pluto is a symbol of rebirth, renewal, transformation. It represents the ability to overcome destruction and to emerge stronger and wiser from the experience. Commitments often get intensified when Venus and Pluto come together. Some of the topics that come up when Venus is connecting with Pluto: how to deal with the fact that the people and things that we love won't necessarily last forever, at least not in their current form. How to let ourselves deal with and grieve our losses without giving up our appreciation of what is good about life. Financially, we could be asked to separate our sense of security and our own value from things such as our possessions, money, good looks. It's not an aspect for approaching things in a shallow way. Rather, it's about appreciating just how important things are to us. On Tuesday, March 10th at 8:30 p.m. Pacific Time, Jupiter stations direct at 15 degrees 5 minutes Cancer. It has been retrograde since November 11th, 2025. When a planet makes a station, in other words, when it is turning direct or when it's turning retrograde, it makes itself felt very strongly. Jupiter is considered one of the most fortunate planets, and it has been moving through Cancer, which is one of its very best signs. When Jupiter is in this sign, ideally, we will open our homes and our hearts, venture out to claim more territory for ourselves. It can be a very favorable transit for enlarging or just renovating your home, but you do need to mind your budget. You can also find new members coming into your family, perhaps through birth or through marriage. I talk in this week's listener question about Venus, another very fortunate planet, and whether or not it can ever be considered not so fortunate. And that brings to mind the so-called fortune of Jupiter, and particularly in the sign of Cancer. I'm not here to say that there are no benefits that come our way from that. But always when Jupiter's involved, we can get a little bit carried away. And when it comes to Jupiter having been in Cancer for a while, I think part of what we've been seeing is a little more of what I will call tribalism. And that is just the sense that people have that they want to spend more time with their people, with their family, with their particular neighborhood or town that they live in. That's just kind of the nature of Jupiter in Cancer. That doesn't have to be a negative thing, but it can easily move in that direction if we are purposefully excluding those who are a bit different than ourselves. I think now maybe that Jupiter is going direct, there is less of that inward-facing energy of Jupiter retrograde. So let's hope in these closing months of Jupiter in Cancer, because it goes into Leo in June, that during this time, we will open our hearts more and we will open ourselves up to new people and new experiences. And now it's time for the Moon Report. And we begin, as always, with the week's major lunation. This week, that is the Sagittarius Last Quarter Moon on Wednesday, March 11th at 2:38 a.m. Pacific Time. The moon is on the Sabian symbol 21 Sagittarius, a child and a dog with borrowed eyeglasses. And the sun is on 21 Pisces, a little white lamb, a child, and a Chinese servant. Both of these symbols mention children, and that brings to mind the idea of innocence and purity. This is the final phase in the Aquarius new moon solar eclipse cycle that began on February 17th at 28 degrees 49 minutes Aquarius. The last quarter moon in a lunar phase cycle is a final action point in that lunar cycle. Sagittarius already is a sign that likes to look back and consider what things mean. So it is a kind of a positive last quarter moon in that regard, because we are being asked to review where we started out at that solar eclipse. And that's been a little bit of an intense eclipse season so far. Now, Sagittarius is a sign that is closely associated with religion and with cultural mores. As you look back over the last few weeks since the solar eclipse, consider whether your plans and actions have been guided by a well-considered worldview. It's easy to get caught up in day-to-day concerns and lose sight of the big picture and why you're choosing to do the things that you do. And most importantly, how it all fits into your vision of a meaningful life. Be sure to spend some time outdoors. That's very nurturing to the Sagittarius spirit, which loves wide open spaces and fresh air and movement. This is the last quarter in a lunar phase family cycle that began with the new moon on December 12th, 2023 at 20 degrees 40 minutes Sagittarius. Think about what you were envisioning for yourself at that new moon. Where is the point in your chart where 20 degrees 40 minutes Sagittarius lives? That will give you some idea of what was especially important to you at that new moon. 9 months after that new moon was a first quarter moon at 19 degrees Sagittarius on September 10th, 2024. The first quarter moon, of course, is an action point in the lunar cycle. And that would have been a moment when we were considering some kind of action we could take to further our Sagittarius new moon objectives. 9 months later was a full moon on June 11th, 2025 at 20 degrees 39 minutes Sagittarius, when we started to get a much clearer picture of what we had actually initiated at the Sagittarius new moon. And at the full moon, we can revise our objectives and our plans based on what we're able to see. And 9 months later is the last quarter moon, where we are now on March 11th at 20 degrees 49 minutes Sagittarius. And again, a last quarter phase is the final action point in a lunar phase cycle. And this one says, what has this cycle meant to you up to now since December 2023? What does it mean in a larger sense, in the larger sense of your life? This is especially true if there are important planets or points in your chart close to 20 degrees Sagittarius. Let's look at the void of course moon periods for this week. The first is on Monday, March 9th, when the moon in Scorpio opposes Uranus in Taurus at 4:28 a.m. Pacific time. It's void of course for 4 hours and 8 minutes, then enters Sagittarius at 8:36 a.m. This void of course moon period begins at the opposition between the fixed signs of Scorpio and Taurus. Neither of these signs are the biggest fan of change, but both signs value the material side of life. Maybe this morning you can surprise the important people in your life with some kind of token of appreciation. Leave a love note or prepare your partner's coffee for them if you wake up first. Surprise your coworkers with some donuts. Use this void of course moon period to get in the habit of letting people know that you value and appreciate them. Remember, a void of course moon is a time when the moon is not making any more aspects in its sign. So the way the void of course moon begins is the way it will tend to continue during the void of course period. And it is a good time for initiating new habits that we also want to continue. On Wednesday, March 11th, the moon in Sagittarius squares the sun at 2:38 a.m. Pacific time. It's void of course for 18 hours and 29 minutes before it enters Capricorn at 9:07 p.m. This is the moment of the Sagittarius last quarter moon, the moon square the sun. Both the sun and moon in this lunation are looking to Jupiter in Cancer for instructions, because Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, this last quarter moon sign, and in traditional astrology, Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces. Now, Jupiter just stationed direct at the time of this void of course moon. If you put all of these planetary influences together, you get a theme of expansiveness, of belief and faith and compassion. Use this void of course moon period to get in the habit of making space for your beliefs while also appreciating or even learning from the beliefs of others who may see the world a bit differently than you. And on Friday, March 13th, the moon in Capricorn sextiles the sun at 7:41 p.m. Pacific time. It's void of course for 12 hours and 32 minutes, and then enters Aquarius on March 14th at 8:13 a.m. The moon in Capricorn feels a strong need for material security. And at this aspect, the sun in Pisces highlights having faith that everything will work out. So there are two slightly different messages here. When the daily news is full of nonstop messages of doom and gloom, it can be difficult to recognize the abundance in life and this could cause anxiety to spike. If you find yourself dwelling on what you don't have, try to take a moment to pause and look around your environment. Make a list of what you see that you're grateful for. Maybe you see a bowl of fruit, a couple of bags of chips, beautiful antique furniture. After objectively listing the material wealth in your environment, feelings of lack will often subside. Use this void of course moon to get in the habit of being present in the here and now so that you can enjoy the abundance in life. Mars makes a conjunction with the moon's north node on Friday, March 13th at 2:58 p.m. Pacific Time at 8 degrees 55 minutes Pisces. We call the moon's north node one of the few can't fail areas of your chart. My teacher used to say that if you make any step in the direction of your fondest north node desires during an aspect like this one, you will be rewarded. The reward might take a different form than what you had envisioned, but it can also take you in a direction that you never would have imagined for yourself, but ends up being very positive. Mars in Pisces advocates for the rights of others, especially those who are going through a really rough patch in life. And this is a transit that can indicate the need and desire to speak up and try to defend those who are not able to do it for themselves. Mercury makes a conjunction with Mars on Sunday, March 15th at 1:07 a.m. Pacific Time at 10 degrees 2 minutes Pisces. Mercury is retrograde at the time of this conjunction, and this is the second in 3 Mercury-Mars conjunctions. The first was on January 17th at 26 degrees 3 minutes Capricorn. Now this one on March 15th at 10:02 Pisces, and on April 20th, one more conjunction at 8 degrees 36 minutes Aries. A combination of Mercury with Mars brings together the planet of communication and rational thought with the planet of action. I think the best way to describe this particular conjunction is to say you need to walk it like you talk it. The things that you say and express that are very important to you are times when you actually need to take steps towards making them a reality. Now, we do have to be a little bit careful, even with Mercury and Mars in the rather gentle sign of Pisces. This is a combination that can make us speak a little more impulsively and not always super diplomatically. So we need to be conscious of not only what we're saying, but the way we're saying it. Mercury and Mars can also describe something about the way we are moving through the world. So it is a good time to try to be a little more cautious in the way you drive a car or ride a bike through the streets. There could be something that you have been trying to express in the world since back in January when we had the first Mercury-Mars conjunction. And maybe right now it doesn't feel like exactly the time to express that, whatever it is. But keep in mind that there is one more conjunction coming up on April 20th in the very spontaneous and assertive sign of Aries. So whatever it is that you have been thinking about and maybe wanting to say to someone important in your life or just express generally, you will get one more opportunity after this one to get it said. In this week's listener question, listener Janie writes, "Hi, April. Thank you for your lovely podcast. It is always a highlight of my week. Thank you, Janie. I keep learning that Venus is a benefic, but I want to ask if you also feel that Venus has a darker side. Venus likes things that make her feel good, but the dark side comes in when those things make other people feel bad, and she doesn't care because she wants what she wants, period. An easy example is something as simple as perfume or fragrance. A perfume or cologne that smells great to one person is literally kryptonite to someone with allergies or asthma, to the point that some people have severe health reactions just from being near things like scented detergents or fabric softener. Yet, most people respond with, "That's their problem. I want to smell nice, and that's all that matters." Or using makeup that tests on animals, which makes her feel pretty but hurts animals. I hate to say this, but it seems like sometimes people with a strong Venus in their chart can honestly be pretty selfish. I can now understand better why Venus is exalted in Pisces, because that is the sign that's supposed to genuinely care about others from the heart and take their needs into account, which is true beauty. What do you think? Is Venus ever a malefic? Janie, this is such a good question. I would never call Venus a malefic. That's not the intrinsic nature or dignity of the planet. Now, is Venus perfect? Of course not. And this is something I've brought up many times before on the podcast about Jupiter, and I'm not sure I've really addressed it in the case of Venus. So I'm glad that you brought this up. And the examples that you used were actually really good. Something like an odor, which can be very pleasing to one person, might really be unpleasant to another, or even actually harmful. And Venus does represent this quality sometimes of selfishness, of, like you say, they want what they want and are not really willing to compromise. I think that does tend to be an extreme example. And we might see that in the case perhaps of somebody with Venus that is in a very strong sign or very close to an angle of the chart, something of that nature, and is much more concerned about their wishes than what will make others feel good and comfortable. But essentially, Venus is a planet that's pretty much about the opposite of that, right? Ideally, it represents the quality of getting along with others, with meeting others halfway, with understanding what another needs to feel good and comfortable, and not just thinking of what pleases you and suits you. So what you described is definitely something I have seen as well, of people who take Venus qualities to an extreme. Like we always say with Jupiter, don't overspend. Don't take chances that you're really not prepared for. And with Venus, it's similar. Don't prioritize your own desires and your own comfort so far above those of others that things are out of balance. Venus ideally is a planet of balance, where, of course, you want to pursue what it is that you want, but at the same time, you really have to pay attention to what others need as well. Janie, I hope that helps. It is a really good question. I'm only quibbling about ever calling Venus or Jupiter malefics, even if they can sometimes behave that way, because it's not in keeping with the essential nature of the planet. That having been said, I hope everybody will be a little more considerate of others when they're putting on their cologne after a shower and before they go out for the evening. If you have a burning question about astrology that you would like me to answer on a future episode of the podcast, please send a voicemail of 1 minute or less at speakpipe.com/Big Sky Astrology Podcast, or you can just send me an email at april@bigskyastrology.com and be sure to put podcast question in the subject line. Well, that is everything I have on my show sheet, so I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you so much for listening to the Big Sky Astrology Podcast. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe or follow the show in your app of choice. Leave a rating or a review, and I hope you'll help spread the word by telling an astrology-loving friend about the podcast. You can read show notes and full transcripts and leave your comments about each episode at bigskyastropod.com. Thanks so much to everyone who continues to show support for the podcast, and especially during my September podathon. On each episode, I'm thanking some of my financial donors by name. This week, let's give a Big Sky Astrology podcast shout-out to Martina Papenchak and Kylene Kalin. Kylene and Martina, thank you so much for listening to the podcast and for supporting the show with your donations. If you would like to support the show and receive access to my bonus video episodes for donors only, please go to bigskyastropod.com and make a contribution of $10 or more to get those special episodes. Or you can make a one-time donation in any amount or become an ongoing monthly contributor. That is it for this episode. Join me again bright and early next Monday. And until then, keep your feet on the ground and your eyes on the stars.